Tihe Moriora, Enamana, Enareo, Enarangatuima, Tena Koto, Tena Koto, Tena Koto Katoa. Welcome everybody to this, the third day of the AWS Digital Innovation Week series. Especially thank you to all of you who are joining for the third time. Your commitment to ongoing learning is great, and we're really glad to have you here today. And welcome everybody who's joining us for the first time today. Today we'll be using the chat function, so if you want to chat amongst yourselves, please feel free to do so. We'll be using the Q&A function down the bottom as well, so watching that Q&A function as well. Kerry, I just wonder whether you changed the screen over. It's great to have everybody here from Australia today. We're glad to be able to do this in partnership with Australia AgriTech Association, and really appreciate the effort of the AWS team of bringing everybody together. Great to have everybody here, and I'd like to introduce Nathan Pugh, who's going to be speaking to us about automation in the primary sector. So great to have you, Nathan, and the stage is yours.
Cheers, Brennan. All right, we're using Zoom to its fullest extent. So I'm going to run. Dan O'Brien's going to run his screen, and I'm going to control it if all goes well here. So. Does that look right? So if I go up. All right, Dan, we might be having technical difficulties, or I've got some delay. Okay. So hey everyone, my name's Nathan Pugh. I'm the industry solutions lead for agriculture and mining for AWS. And so I've been with AWS about 1.5 years now, and prior to that I was with a company called Trimble. I actually got my start with Trimble in Christchurch, New Zealand. So I moved down there. I was there for 3 years, and then have been in the US for about 20 years now. But I'm originally from Calgary, Canada, and grew up in a rural town north of Calgary. What I'm going to talk to you about today is around automation in the agricultural sector. But the way that I want to start this out is, one of the ways, before the world changed and we could all meet in person, is we would do a lot of fulfillment center tours for customers. So we would bring them into Seattle for these executive briefing meetings, and then we'd go do a tour of one of our sort fulfillment centers. And then we could talk about how we've actually implemented a lot of automation and robotics ourselves. And one of the reasons we like to do that is because we have this whole initiative called Learning from Amazon, where we take innovations that we've done internally and then help our customers do similar innovations themselves. So we've got things like digital innovation workshops, which is helping to innovate like Amazon and using kind of our framework for innovation, but also things around supply chain and things around automation. And so we don't give away all the secret sauce in the tour. So what I'm gonna show you is all public here. But I wanted to start with some of the things that we do and some of the innovations in automation that we're looking at, and then give you some examples of what's happening in the agricultural sector. So let me see. I tried to go down, Dan. I might just need to get you to advance slides for me. So just a couple trends that we see in industrial processing. If you look at like any agricultural raw materials in general, it is going to go through some kind of processing plant, whether that's just simple packing, or it could be milling, or it could be actually producing a finished product with with different food additives and all that coming together. It could be things like livestock feed, it could be seed oil, it could be abattoir for protein processing and those type of things. But generally, there's a processing side to the industry. And there's this economist quote saying that data is the new oil, but it's really more than the new oil, because it's really driving the entire business and the entire operation now, but also how things are changing. And a couple things to point out, like product as a service now. We're starting to see manufacturers, both on the discrete and the processing side, start to look at product as a service. And so in the ag segment, especially with crop inputs, you're starting to see results driven. So hey, if you use this prescription, we think you will get these results, and it's more that product as a service and a set of crop inputs as a service. We're seeing it with say oil or lubricants, rather than just buy a product, you're buying a subscription to that. And if you follow their maintenance protocols and maintenance procedures, you should be using less of that and you'll get a discount on it. Then there's so much that's being driven by data and machine learning on product improvements. So if you look at the seeds and genetic traits and how quickly those are coming to market from research farms and by different genomics programs that different groups are running. So there's a lot that's going on here in the industrial processing. So on the next slide, I'm not going to talk about all of these in the interest of time, but a couple that I want to highlight on is workforce specifically, because a lot of the examples I have really are around kind of the human interface and which parts that you want to automate and which parts that we still need people in the process for, and then how to keep those people safe is a big aspect. So that's one of them. And then I think traceability and transparency. I remember hearing, especially for the New Zealand dairy industry, that the traceability for export of products to China is the people who are buying those products at a premium price want to guarantee that they're not getting counterfeit products. And I think kind of food counterfeiting and some of these things has been happening all over the world. So, but also in the interest of food safety and recall, which there's been, higher incidence of food safety and recall here lately, amongst the agricultural sector. We had the mad cow thing between Canada and the U.S. We had romaine lettuce in the U.S. that was recalled, and so it's not the ideal use case. We'd rather have that consumer transparency use case, but food safety and recall is an important one as well. All right, I tried to go next. Dan, next slide, please. So like I said, I'm going to start with how we're doing things within Amazon's fulfillment centers. So we started out with 2 fulfillment centers, and we're up to 185 of these. And just to give you some idea of the level of automation and the size of these things, you can kind of see in that picture like all the solar panels on the roof. So converted to, there's the equivalent of 50 rugby pitches on top of that roof full of solar panels. And most of these the new generations that are using the robotics, the Amazon robotics tools, have upwards of 1,500 to 2,000 robots running, 42 kilometers worth of conveyor belts. And so even though we've got a lot of people, generally between 1,500 and 2,000 associates that work in these, when you go into one of these fulfillment centers, it seems really, really quiet because they're pretty massive facilities, and there's a huge level of automation with the conveyors and the robots moving around. So it's been, we're adding these at a rate of, between 25 and probably 50 a year for some of these fulfillment centers. And so if you look at the, level of building a factory with this amount of robotics and automation, it's pretty incredible what our teams are doing to build out fulfillment centers of this. Now, when I say sortable, we've got a few different types of fulfillment centers. The sortable ones are products that can fit within a certain weight inside kind of this box, this size of yellow box. And that lends itself a lot better to automation than something like kayaks and canoes and washers and dryers and some of these big things. And also some of our produce fulfillment centers that we do for Amazon Fresh, Whole Foods, and the Go stores. But so there's been a huge amount of expansion in this area, and I'm just going to give you a little bit of a peek into how we do things there. So we've invested a fair bit. We acquired a robotics company called Kiwifruit, and I've got a little bit more info on the robotics. But our number one driver from an Amazon leadership principle is customer obsession. And so to get customers products at the price they want and in the timeliness they want, we've had to make some of these investments and really rethink the way that these warehouses would work. And so in this case, we've tried to take the task like walking through the warehouse, walking kilometers and kilometers through the warehouse that's really hard for people to do and searching around, taking these tasks that are ripe for automation, but then how does that work in a people-driven environment? Because our associates are really the ones that make these things tick, right? And so it's that combination of a human workforce in combination with some of the automations of tasks that we really want to leverage both strengths in here, because robots really aren't good at complex kind of analysis tasks and those type of things. And people really don't like doing kind of the automated, repetitive, menial tasks. So that's kind of been our philosophy. But the real driver's been, how do we get products at the lowest cost to the quickest rate to our customers? Okay, go next slide, which I think is a okay. So Amazon Robotics. This is the first generation robot that we had in deployment. We've got a next generation that's half the size and can lift. That one's 700 pounds. This one can lift 1,200 pounds. And so, you know, one of the main things on being able to automate things in a factory or warehouse setting is navigation and location mapping. And so we do this by having QR codes on the ground. They all have collision. They have forward and or radar that's looking at all sides to make sure they don't collide with other things. So there's a collision avoidance, but it's also this navigation of where stuff is and where it's going to go to. So so navigation location is a really critical portion of this. So if we go to the next slide, I've got a video of these in operation. I'll just give you a little bit of an idea. And for anyone who's seen the Harry Potter movies, if you remember when all like the bookshelves in the library are moving around on their own, this is almost what it looks like when you look behind the cage where all these robots are operating, because they're moving at a pretty, I think they move 15 kilometers an hour. So they can move pretty quick and carry a lot of weight. And you can see on the floor there's a bunch of different codes, and that's how they're navigating with computer vision and cameras that look at those codes. But a centralized computer basically controls their pathways. And if we get in the case where a product drops on the floor or something, a supervisor has a vest that they have to come out with that makes them visible to the robots. And so they'll clear a safe zone and a buffer zone for that supervisor to walk out, pick up that product, and then get it back in place. So next slide. What are we doing? So where we use this is generally where inventory, we're putting all the inventory, and we use this random stow method of inventory where we don't put all like products together, because that's not the most efficient way to make robots work together. So we've got humans that are picking and packing. The shelves are brought to them. They're able to see with computer vision. They get highlights of where they should be picking out. Then the robot takes the shelving back to a location, and then they can go and get charged. So most orders are actually fulfilled within 45 minutes of a customer hitting buy now. And so most of the time in like our Prime 2-day shipping is as a result of having to just go through different kind of last mile delivery services and the logistics services as well. Okay, let's go next slide. The next thing I wanted to talk about on automation is that we've done is our Amazon Go store. And I don't know, I think we've got, a half dozen of these, or maybe it's up to a dozen, but our first, this was a video from the release of our first flagship store that was in Seattle. And the idea was to reimagine what a little kind of convenience store would be like if you didn't have to wait in line and check out. If you could just walk in, pick whatever you wanted off the shelf, and then walk out and you would be billed for it. And so the idea is that using a number of different sensors, we've got sensors on those shelves, we've got cameras that watch what people do. So basically the cameras identify a person coming in, you scan your barcode, so it knows who that is. So there's no facial recognition or anything. It just basically creates a box around you and tracks you through the store, tracks what you take off, tracks what you put back. I know some of my colleagues have taken their kids in to try to really confuse it and have them run around, but it seemed to be pretty bulletproof there. But I think the big thing here is how we were able to do this level, automating the checkout and the invoicing process and running that through using computer vision, a number of algorithms, and then the sensor fusion that's popped up on the screen by using not just cameras, but shelf sensors and other types of sensors that are around, and temperature sensors to make sure like sandwiches and perishables don't go bad. So that's another thing that we're now bringing. We've talked to a number of retail customers and actually ag retailers as well about how we could do this. In the processing side, where we're having discussions is really around maintenance, inventory, parts, warehouses, and how to keep track of inventory of small components for maintenance purposes. So let's go next. So just to kind of talk a little bit about where we see most of the activity, and I want to talk about the I'm borrowing something from my old company here. Is we used to talk about task productivity. So if you do one click down, you've got a task that you're trying to automate, and so once you start to piece together multiple tasks that you automate, so next click, then you can get to that process automation. And then once you start to put that process automation across your plants, across different facilities, then you get into kind of that enterprise automation. And so this is what we've been in discussions with a lot of the processors around, and what are the tasks that make sense to automate. And so the next slides I'll go through are a number of things. You'll see that there's a fair bit of, we've got a bit of overlap between what Karen talked about the other day around computer vision, but computer vision has been such an important part of automation and sensing. So what we have on the video that's showing right now is our prototyping team did this for a large beef producer, of being able to track inventory and different weights and how different processes go all the way through from getting them in from a feedlot into a processing facility, into packaging, and then into distribution. And so, again, this is that sensor fusion of taking temperature sensors, simple sensors, some of the machine automation and plant control systems, warehouse inventory management, and how you reimagine that if you can start to track everything. And so that ties into a lot of what Rachel talked about 2 days ago around the IoT side of things, and why IoT is one of the core pieces into intelligent supply chain. So this kind of shows that whole process from start to finish through a protein processing facility. Let's go next. I think we discussed this one, but this is a way that this company in the UK, Cataly, is using just passive cameras to be able to detect lameness scores, but other health indicators around cattle. So they actually are using computer recognition or computer vision to recognize the specific coat patterns. So they don't have to track ear tags or anything like that. They track the coat patterns and then can track that cow and the movement of that cow. And then obviously give I think the big thing is the lameness scores, so they can do proactive veterinary assistance for the cattle, but also see how the cows are acting in the milking parlor and in other areas that they have cameras set up. So it's another good computer vision application of being able to automate something that you would have to have someone sitting out there kind of watching. Let's go next. What are we doing on time? Okay. So this is a company out of Queensland, I think, that has a product called Fit Machine. And what they've done, rather than having to, sometimes on legacy equipment of trying to get, signals off of the sensors that are built into legacy equipment, they've developed a basically magnet-mounted sensor that will do the learning for you. So you don't have to necessarily take manufacturer specifications on predictive maintenance or on component lifecycle failure and analysis. What this will do is it has a strong magnet mount. Then it has acoustic sensors, temperature sensors, vibration sensors, and there's one other I'm missing there. But what it'll do is learn the normal behavior and the normal signature, and the sound and the acoustics is actually quite important. And in some of the automated mining trucks, the early automated mining trucks, they blew out a transmission because they didn't have someone in the cab that could listen for those sounds of when failures were going to happen. So this will actually train and provide a baseline of what your equipment's supposed to look like and sound like from all this sensor fusion together. And then it'll start to look as it goes into modes where it could cause a failure and start to predict the failure within a 1 to 2 week time frame. So predictive maintenance can be accomplished there. So pretty cool application. I'll this is another one that I think Karen mentioned. She had a static image, but it's another thing our prototyping team did for a pork producer around pig counting, and I guess if you're standing there, if this was done with a clicker before, right, and when you open the truck door and pigs pile off, it's not necessarily easy to get a count of the pigs, and so you'd say, why is that important? Well, this really drives forecasting. It drives how much feed that the stockyards have to provide in order to feed that number of pigs, and then it also looks at the forecasting and the payment terms of what farmers are going to get, given the number of swine that were processed and transferred. So pretty critical to have a correct count of those pigs, but difficult to do given the kind of the chaoticness of what's going on when you're unloading and loading pigs onto a truck. So next. This company based in New South Wales, I think, and this is looking at, the images there are showing, I think, recycling facilities, but we're using these in a number of plant and workshops and warehouses. But they're taking the existing CCTV camera feeds that you would have from security cameras, and then being able to apply machine learning to it to look at collision avoidance and safety aspects of where so it should be exclusion zones. They're doing it with forklift operation, so moving pallets around, but can actually predict a forklift collision with a human and then put a quick kill switch down on the forklift ignition. So some pretty neat things from as far as safety and worker safety, not being in the way of harmful equipment. So some neat stuff. BigMate also has a product called Thermi that I didn't have room for, but that was automating, looking at compliance for COVID testing, temperature testing, and checks for workers for kind of the back to work in processing facilities. Especially within the U.S., we had quite a few. U.S. and Canada, actually, we had quite a few food processors that had to shut down because of like rampant cases of COVID going through their workforce. Next one. Okay, last video for everyone here. I think Karen may have talked about this as far as PPE detection and looking at compliance. Really important in some of these facilities from a food quality, food safety perspective. This is a video from a healthcare application, but we're using this in more laboratory, factory, and processing facility settings. But being able to detect who's got their safety gear on at what times, and being compliant with different levels of personal protective equipment. And the nice thing about a number of these applications is that you can get some level of automation using sensors that are already there today. So security cameras, any kind of cameras or imagery that would be set up can be used to do some of this analysis today. And I think you'll have seen that yesterday with the Kiwifruit detection demo that I thought was pretty cool. It makes me think that I could actually even start doing that myself here. Okay, let's go to the next one here. So Module's a company, so we talked a lot about computer vision, but they've got a belt, and it's a smart belt that they're using in processing facilities and factory settings and manufacturing settings. And it looks at people's movement throughout the day, and not this isn't around a productivity, this is more about a safety, to look at unsafe lifting characteristics, being in areas that could be potential danger standpoints, but also looking over time at how repetitive movements and motions may affect people's health. So pretty cool, and it looks just like a normal belt, but has a sensor array in the belt buckle. And we've got a number of companies that are implementing this, including some mining companies in Australia, but a pretty neat aspect to try to drive more safe behaviors that are not just machinery related. So that is all I had. Sorry, it was a bit of a whirlwind run through, but wanted to get as many of these examples and also how we're using automation within the Amazon environment as well. And thanks for the time. And up next, we've got smart processing and looking at some of the initiatives around Industry 4.0, which really ties into some of these automation initiatives that we just talked about. So I'll stay online to answer any questions through the chat, and I appreciate the time today.
Cool, thanks, Nathan. So we go to the next topic. So Curry, are you able to see my screen? I think I'm showing my screen. Okay. Right, hey, so we're gonna do, like Nathan mentioned, we're gonna talk about smart processing and how we can leverage, Industry 4.0 techniques to make processing sites within the agriculture industry smarter, right? So my name is Prashant Adiraju. I'm in the AWS partner organization, and in my role, I focus on developing vertical solutions for various markets like agriculture, with focus on leveraging AWS IoT services. So what I would like to do the next 20 odd minutes is take you through a presentation which is all about how do we make various processing sites. We'll look at the value chain of agriculture and look at how Industry 4.0 techniques can be applied to really improve productivity of these sites. And we'll take a perspective around how AWS IoT services and the length and breadth of those services are being brought together with a partner community to solve a wide range of use cases. Yeah. So with that, what I'd like to do is sort of dive into this particular context here, right? And I want to start with, who is the customer here that we are targeting this particular offering for? And I'll talk about what the offering is. But before I do that, if you look at the value chain of agriculture, right, from seed to consumption, there's crop inputs. These are companies that have manufacturing operations that are producing fertilizers and crop protection products. There's equipment manufacturers that also have manufacturing operations. And then you've got these food processor sites that are large and have got manufacturing operations as well. So the context of this webinar is for those three customer types in terms of how can we really help these customers really modernize their operations, if you will, right? And we'll talk about the Industry 4.0 techniques and IoT and ML/AI techniques to really help modernize those operations. And when you look at these sites, the objective is how to improve productivity of plant managers in those sites, how to improve product quality. We'll talk about sustainability. So these are all the breadth and depth of the use cases that are possible with some of the techniques that I'll cover. Now, before I sort of dive into this, and I think Nathan had several industry trends, but I want to sort of focus on, two important trends that are quite unique to this industry. And I think when I looked at, some of the statistics here and looked at sustainability, for example, there's a significantly growing population, and the industry is already, consuming, 70% of the natural resources. I think it's 50% of the available land. But I think what is quite significant here is in terms of green grass emissions, right? It's like 24% of all the green grass emissions coming out of the agriculture industry. Now, how can we help lower that energy footprint? It's sort of one of the areas in which the connected factory solution focuses on. So I want to talk about that. But I think the second important piece, which is around data being a strategic asset, as it's sort of shown on the slide, how can we really enable faster insights, more informed decisions amongst multiple external factors? And I think this is sort of an important one, because you're sort of managing a business that's very dependent on production of crops, that's subject to external factors like weather. And how do you really leverage data that is already being collected to drive risk mitigation, to improve decision making? And ultimately, when you look at this, it's a tight margin business, right? And you look at the tight margin business, it's all about keeping asset uptime high so that your assets are running efficiently. They don't require higher maintenance, so things of that nature. And that's where the cost factors come in. So what I'll shift to is this theme around data being a strategic asset, and we'll talk about how to collect, manage, and analyze this data with AWS and its partner capabilities so that you can really drive significant value in terms of business outcomes. Now, this is sort of this data flywheel thing, right? You look at the agriculture value chain, you can start anywhere in this value chain. You could start with your food processing site and how to really make that food processing site efficient. You can look to bring in data from how the crops are being produced, the yield from those crops. You can also look at demand signals from how the foods are getting consumed from your supply chain. And how do you really build an intrinsic value chain here in terms of a data flywheel so that information from your consumers is helping you create the demand signal so you're really able to optimize your food production, for example. So it's with this context, I want to sort of talk now about what kind of value can be extracted from the data and what are some of the challenges in extracting that data. And that's where the connected factory solution layer sort of fits in. Now, what we see across industries, and agriculture is no different, right? Is that customers are able to consistently leverage the value of their data and are able to reduce operating costs. They're able to improve margins. They're able to even reduce their production costs. Now, if you look at the picture on the right, there's different possibilities that customers have been able to extract. And you can look at this from a standpoint of impact on cost reduction. They're able to reduce the cost of production by 10 to 20%. They're able to improve quality of their products by 10, 15%. They're able to improve energy consumption by 15%. They're able to improve how they deliver products to the market much faster. So these are all the possibilities, but this isn't easy, right? There is the challenge around a lot of the data that gets generated and collected. There's a lot of data that's locked up. Some of this data is being stored, for the last 10 to 15 years. And many of the data is not analyzed because it predominantly gets locked up in certain proprietary systems, like historian systems, like SCADA systems and PLCs. Now, certainly we look at customers and they want to leverage the capabilities in AWS, like, for example, the deeper analytics capabilities like AI, ML, and they want to begin their journey. But the approach we've taken is we start with the basics first. We first unlock the data, extract and expose that information so that if you look at a food processing site, you might have many lines in that site. How do you really look at how efficient your line is operating? Can you visualize how efficient all your lines are operating in that one food processing site? And then you're able to build data stores and you're able to then look at very specific problems, like how do I reduce energy footprint of that food processing site, for example. Then you start to get much deeper in terms of analysis and really then optimizing it to then go indeed reduce energy costs. So that's sort of the journey that we've seen customers take. And with that sort of in mind, one of the key things that the connected factory solution looks to solve is, if you take a particular food processing customer, they might have many applications that are running in that one plant, right? And that one plant could be connecting to multiple devices, multiple protocols. And if you sort of understand the operational technology integration, you might build an application that connects to one device, but how do you really scale this across this heterogeneous nature of that plant that's got multiple protocols? And there isn't a single source of truth, if you will, to be able to look at this information, right? And that's what we sort of describe here as the undifferentiated heavy lifting piece, right? Because you have to look at connectivity across these 300 plus protocols. You might need new hardware, not only cameras like the ones in the previous presentation, but you might need sensors. You might need other industrial gateways to be able to tap into this data. The third aspect of this is how do you do integration of your operational technology with some of the IT systems, right? And how do you really create a scalable solution across these things? And then lastly, you want to look at data visualization. So this is sort of the implementation challenge and what we describe here as the undifferentiated heavy lifting piece, right? So there's definitely the set of business challenges that like I talked about, and there's also a set of IT and technology challenges to address. So what I want to then now shift into is want to introduce the connected factory vision, which is targeted for customers with manufacturing operations. Like if you have a food processing center and you might have multiple of those spread out across many regions, many locations, we want to sort of make it easy for customers to really modernize those operations, right? You might start at factory one or the food processing site one, get visibility from that food processing site, and then sort of expand across all of your locations so that you sort of get a single pane of view across those sites. You may want to reduce energy, for example, or you want to improve production quality. You want to improve the production output of those sites. You're really able to optimize across those multiple locations, right? So that's sort of the larger vision of the solution. I'll sort of dig into what the solution does, but the foundation piece of it is ingesting data to AWS. We address how to unblock the data from all of the industrial protocols that I talked about, store this data, then model assets. You might want to build a production or a food processing model, or could be building an energy consumption model, and then being able to really visualize and sort of show this information, right, in a very historical manner. So you're able to go do root cause analysis of why is my food processing lines efficiency not as high as I would expect, right? And ultimately, if you're able to go deeper analytics, you're really then able to go optimize factory output, improve product quality, improve asset utilization. And then lastly, how do you really reduce maintenance costs? So those are all the breadth and depth. I've not certainly covered all of the use cases here, but think about, hey, what kind of business problems can we solve at that food processing site? Is it about quality improvement? Is it about increasing asset utilization? Is it about improving maintenance, right? So it's with that objective, you're saying, okay, now let's go collect all of the right data and all of the right foundational pieces to go solve for that piece, right? And that's the approach that we've taken. And with that unlocking of data, what I think the solution does is there's actually 4 key pieces that we bring together, right? Now, all of these 4 pieces builds on the AWS foundational set of services and the breadth and depth of AWS IoT services. And we see that a vast majority of these customers are seeking a solution that can just free up that data, and they want to do this at scale so they get real-time visibility. And this data visibility could be through dashboards, could be through deeper analytics. They want to apply newer techniques like ML and AI to really then solve for some of the use cases that I talked about, right? Improving throughput, for example. Now, the key pieces in here is, in order to not overwhelm you with the breadth and depth of the AWS services in terms of helping you really get focused on solving your business problems, there's a connected factory reference architecture. Think of that as the technical asset to ensure repeatability. It sort of forms the foundation of a complete solution that you can then scale across multiple sets of these food processing sites. Or you could have an equipment manufacturing site that's got 30 locations or 40 locations. You're now able to repeat this across those different locations. And we describe this as part of our manufacturing reference architecture, and that's sort of that capability, which is essentially designed to be able to connect to all of those disparate sets of systems and being able to standardize how data gets collected, how data gets stored in AWS, then ultimately how you need to process it. And you could think of this processing of this data in the use case context, right? I want to improve my plant manager productivity. I want to improve the quality of the food processing that's happening there. I want to improve energy consumption, right? So it's with that context in mind that you collect all of this data. And then we certainly see, the need for customers. They're looking for help to be able to deploy this, to be able to solve for a wide range of problems. And this is where the deployment expertise, and I'll talk a little more about what the deployment expertise is and from which sets of partners, and then also talk about some of the solutions that are being deployed to make some of these outcomes or modernize these manufacturing operations. Now, where the benefits really come about is, and I think if you step back into this presentation, it's all about that data as an asset and how to unblock the data so that you can really go modernize your manufacturing operations. And our objective is to help you get to a production solution quickly and as quickly as possible, but also you may want to explore what is possible. So we want to be able to provide you with the ability to deploy. Let's say you want to visualize the lines in your food processing plant, and you want to be able to look at all the data, and you want a visualization dashboard, and you want a quick proof of value of that. Hey, could you do this in a few weeks? And that's the intent with this Connected Factory Foundation. And the objective is, with this solution, customers don't have to invest significantly in the data collection, which is, like I described earlier, is considered undifferentiated heavy lifting. And then you as customers are able to collect, organize, and store this data in AWS. That could be like in your operational data store that you can access quite frequently, so that you get a single source of truth in one place. Think of it like an industrial data lake, for example. And you can now start to, for some of your high value assets in that food processing side, define virtual assets. You can define hierarchies in AWS. So now you're able to even remotely monitor these assets. And that can be a significant productivity benefit, right? Now, once you have all this data streamlined and the data collection process in place, the immediate business value is through visualization. That's sort of the first step, like I talked about, right? In the journey that you want to take, first unblock the data. Second, you sort of visualize it so that you're now able to look at all the operational metrics in that particular food processing site. And you look at that and say, okay, now I want to dig into how can I improve this particular operational metric, or you might have a line that's operating at 75%. How do I then improve that metric, right? And you might want to look at other data sources to help improve that metric. And this is where you will have the ability to streamline process with other IT systems, like your maintenance system or your MES system, for example. And that sort of is the foundation for the higher level solution. And that's sort of the journey you would take, is now be able to deploy higher value solution that improve, for example, I want to reduce my maintenance costs. I want to improve energy consumption. So those are all becoming higher level and much more deeper level of analytics capabilities. Now, the last piece of it, and I'll dig in a little more about this, is the deployment expertise. Is we want to offer the ability to not only do this at that first food processing site, but how do you repeat it? You might have 30 or 40 of these food processing sites across the various sites. How do you do this repeatedly at scale? Right? So you start at one location, you're able to then roll it out across those multiple locations. And it's with that objective, right? We've sort of have this partner community that we sort of put in place, because what we certainly see is that customers, there's different kinds of customers, right? There's customers that are now wanting to leverage more and more of the AWS capability, and they feel comfortable that they're able to tackle all of these challenges on their own. And there are a vast majority that are looking for help. And these customers, they lack the deep knowledge with the AWS platform to design the right architecture. They don't have the right resources to implement it. They lack potentially the technology depth to integrate with all of their enterprise systems, like I talked about, or need help in just creating compelling visualizations, for example, or not staff to, operate these technology solutions around the globe. And this is where our partner community plays a critical role. And for this connected factory foundational piece, we're bringing in an ecosystem of partners across hardware, across edge software, and this edge layer that you see in the second layer from the bottom is really focused around how do we connect to all of those disparate systems that you might have. Like you might have 70 applications and there might be 300 plus protocols those applications talk to. How do we unblock that data? And that's that layer that unblocks that data. And there are partners that can really help in driving deployment. And these are a sets of global partners as well as very regional partners that can really roll this out. And these are partners that can really provide complementary capabilities to what AWS offers. And the ultimate objective is for this community of partners to really be able to deliver an end-to-end solution. And that's what brings me to the last layer here on the top, which is the solution layer. And I think this is sort of the journey, like I said before. You first start with unblocking the data, which is what the bottom two layers do. And then once you unblock the data, you might start with basic visualization. And then once you have the right data in place, you want to go do deeper analytics. And this is where, hey, how do I reduce energy consumption for the food processing side? How do I improve productivity of that processing site, et cetera, right? And that's where the last piece of it sort of falls in place. Now, what I want to leave you with is this connected factory solution foundation, as it gets applied to the value chain of agriculture. There's various places in which you can apply it. You can apply it to the fertilizer manufacturing companies. You can apply it to, you might be manufacturing agriculture equipment. You might be doing food processing. And all of these are large manufacturing sites that have high value assets. And how do you connect these assets? How do you unblock the data from these assets and then bring that data to solve a wide range of business problems, right? So you could have a smart barn, a smart factory, a smart processes. And what really smart means in this context is to have a fully integrated system so that you're able to now, in near real time, able to look at all of your data pieces, right? You're able to now, it goes back to the data flywheel that I was talking about, which is you're able to get your demand signals, and then you're able to change production outputs. You're able to get signals from how crops are being produced, weather signals, and improve product quality and the processing quality in the food thing. And that's the end state vision we want to get to and help you get there. And what we're starting with this journey is that foundational piece that you don't have to worry about the basics, which is about the data collection piece, so you're able to extract the data you need to achieve these objectives, right? And the intent here is to help you accelerate that journey so that you can really optimize your operations, reduce the infrastructure heavy lifting, and that's where the partner community plays a role. The sets of AWS capabilities plays a role to really unlock that value. And ultimately, we want to provide this in a very consistent manner so you get a consistent experience and are really able to accelerate what we describe as the Industry 4.0 success. Now, there are many sources of other information, and what I encourage you to do is to get in touch with the Ag team here, agteam@amazon.com. We can answer more questions, or also schedule some time with an expert so that we can provide additional clarity or additional feedback on how to get started. And that just brings me, I just want to leave you with this piece. What we certainly see is customers wanting to get started in two ways. One in which they've really gone through what Industry 4.0 means to their business, and they have a clarity on how they want to really optimize or modernize their operations. And for those types of customers, we've got a sort of a prescriptive approach in which you can get started. It's allowing you to mobilize all the capabilities to get into production at that first food processing site, and then rinse and repeat across all the sites that you might have, right? And it's sort of this 8-week process to get going with that one location. The second type of customer, you're still early in your evaluation, you're looking for help to get started, you want to explore what is possible, and this is where our partner community plays a role in which they leverage the Connected Factory Foundation and provide you the capabilities to sort of get you started. It could be as simple as, hey, let me just connect a high value asset where you're looking to reduce maintenance costs. Hey, I want to understand what is possible if I connect that asset and collect the data and look at all the operational metrics. And a use case like that, hey, how do we stand up a solution in 4 weeks, for example? So that's the other possibility here. So I'll leave you to get in touch and also schedule some time with an expert. So with that, thanks for taking the time today, and I'll get the time back. Thank you.
Thank you, Prasant, and thank you, Nathan. Great presentations today. Thank you, everybody, for joining, and 2 really great presentations again today to follow up what we've done in the last couple of days. We have been recording everything, and so we will be putting these presentations onto the AgriTech New Zealand website, so they'll be available for you and your colleagues to review later on. I'd really like to thank the team at AWS for sharing all their expertise and insights over the last couple of days. And also for the team at AgriTech Australia Agritech Association for their support. It's been really great to be able to run these sessions, and we look forward to sharing more in the future. We do have some other events coming up in the next while at AgriTech New Zealand. Next week on Wednesday the 18th at 1:30, we will be having a global landscape of AgriTech investing webinar. So we'll have some of the team from Finisterre, Arama and Ingrid to share with us what exactly is happening in terms of global investments in AgriTech around the world. Despite current trading conditions with COVID, the investment's still increasing. So what's really driving that will be fascinating to hear about. I look forward to hearing from Arama and Ingrid. Also, again, as in the last couple of days, I'd like to remind you that we do have do have field days coming up, of course, next year, and the Innovation Awards are already ramping up and beginning to seek entrance to that. So if you're innovating and you want to share your innovations and celebrate with the rest of the community, please go along to the Field Days website and start keeping an eye out for the Innovation Awards. Again, thank you for all our partners here. Been a great couple of sessions. Look forward to doing it again. Thank you all for joining. Goodbye.